delighted to have so many people on this panel and webinar today. I'm chairing the panel today for the launch of Global Teaching Excellence. ICSPE and the World Association for Sport Management, WASM, have joined together for this new initiative aimed at people who are passionate about learning and teaching. Designed to enhance best practice within the sport and physical activity discipline, GTE will provide a series of open online events throughout the year to discuss, learn and understand all aspects of teaching excellence. The extensive network of both organisations allows the unique opportunity to discuss and learn best practice initiatives from across the globe. And today we have a very special panel of experts from across the international globe. Dr. Yuri Schaefer has been president of ICSPE since 2016 and has served in many prestigious sports organisations, including the Israeli Ministry of Culture and Sport, Israel's National Centre for Sporting Excellence, the Wingate Institute for Elite Sport, as well as being the founding president of the International Council for Coaching Excellence. He's a strong promoter of equal access to physical activity for all and the recipient of the Israel Olympic Committee Award for outstanding leadership and contribution to coach education. In 2017, he was elected to the International Jewish Sport Hall of Fame. So welcome, Yuri. Thank you. Professor Karen Danylchuk is a professor of sport management, acting director of the School of Kinesiology and former associate dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Western Ontario in London, Canada. She has been a leader in global sport management professional organisations, serving as a former president of the North American Association for Sport Management, NASM, and is the current president of the World Association for Sport Management, WASM. Throughout her 42-year career, she has published extensively and has presented research globally and is a strong advocate of sports management teaching excellence. Dr. Gerco van Dalfsen is a senior lecturer at Hans University Groningen in the Netherlands and has over 25 years' experience of working within higher education. He has responsibility for internationalisation and interculturalisation within his university and has developed and led many global sports seminars to thousands of students. His research specialises with entrepreneurship, shared leadership, engagement and employability, preparing the leaders within sport and physical activity of the future. And finally, Professor Rosa Lopez from Venezuela has a wealth of experience within sport and physical activity. She's the founding president of the Latin America Sport Management Association, ALHEDA, founding secretary of the Latin America Socio-Cultural Studies in Sports Association, and honorary life member of the International Association of Physical Education and Sport for Girls and Women. In 2006, she received the Gold Medal of Honour given by the International Council of Health, Physical Education, Recreation and Dance, and in 2007 received the highest research award given by the Venezuelan Council of Universities. Currently, Rosa is the president of the International Society for Comparative Physical Education and Sport and treasurer of the World Association for Sport Management. So you can see we have a wealth of experience and expertise on the panel today. So let's start the discussion with the first question, and I'd like to Yuri to answer this first. Yuri, what do you think we mean by the term global teaching excellence?
Hello everyone, thank you Ruth. I'm so happy to be part of this event which opens a series of the global teaching excellence. I was looking for the best definition that might explain what do we expect when we mean teaching or learning excellence. And I found the following: world-class teaching and success in developing students as independent lecturers and critical thinkers, academic support to students, valuable work experience, extensive opportunities for overseas collaboration. So what we actually are trying to say is that in our open world, where transformation of knowledge comes and leaves so easy, we should take advantage of it. It means that what is not, wherever we are, if something is not reachable, it is reachable elsewhere. And the accessibility to the knowledge and to research findings is so much better nowadays than in the past that it's changing the way we are studying. And if you integrate into it the new technologies as part of the teaching processes, and later on I will try to explain what are the differences between the traditional way we taught and the new way we are teaching, I think will explain what global teaching excellence is all about.
Great, thank you, Yuri. Karen, do you want to follow up on that same question?
Sure. And first, Ruth, I'd like to thank you and your organization for the invitation to be involved with the panel today. To me, global means an approach that emphasizes the interconnectedness and diversity of peoples around the world. It incorporates learning about the histories, cultures, geographies, and current issues of the world's regions. And I believe that a global education as a teaching approach really broadens or widens a student's perspective. It helps them see the bigger picture in the world, helps them understand the realities of today's world, allows them to develop values and attitudes and knowledge and skills that are going to ultimately allow them to operate in an interconnected world and face the challenges that are out there. We all know that internationalization is a strategic priority for most universities and other educational institutions around the world. And I think that those who adapt a global teaching and learning approach really stand to serve this priority. And it also shows leadership, which I think is so important.
Great, thanks, Karen. Gerco, do you want to come in here and give me your view on what we think we mean by global teaching excellence?
Yes, thank you, Ruth. For me, it consists of several elements. One of the important ones is recognition by students. If students recognize that we're not only teaching on a Dutch level, on a Dutch perspective, but also on a European, but even better, on a global scale, then we will embrace, say, all kind of cultural diversity. And I think that's what we need nowadays with a complex, say, world in which we cannot solve it all ourselves. So we need different cultures, different perspectives, different solutions. So that's one very important part. Another one is that with the technology, as already mentioned before, it is now possible to be anywhere in the world and still, say, follow classes. So if I look, for instance, at our university, my students are somewhere in the world, anywhere on any continent, and still they participate in class. Time differences is now and then a challenge. So yes, Karen, we understand it's very dark at your place, but I think that's what we need to embrace. So students are eager to learn if we give them the right content. And wherever we are in the world, we should emphasize that learning is on one hand required. On the other hand, we need to, say, invite students also to learn. And that's on several levels. That also counts for staff. I learn a lot from my students, luckily, day by day. And the last thing we do is flexible assessments. So it's not us that say, okay, there's like a level to reach, but we turn it around. Students nowadays can choose in our system what kind of learning outcomes they want to achieve. And yes, of course, there's guidance, a lot of guidance needed. So global teaching excellence means also that students are more and more important. So not the program only, but specifically the students. So we put the students on number one. They are, say, our future. So we put, say, them very central in our approach.
Great, thanks, Gerco. And we'll pick up on a lot of these things that are being pulled out from the answers that the panel members are giving later in the discussion. Rosa, can I invite you to answer that first question? What do you think is meant by global teaching excellence? I think Rosa may be having a few technical problems from Venezuela. So I will move on, and hopefully Rosa can join us back in a few minutes when she gets that technical problem sorted out. So we've touched on a few things there, what we think the broad scope of global teaching excellence is. But if we can focus on the first word, and some of you have alluded to it already, about globalisation and about internationalisation. And can I ask you just to kind of explain how you, in your universities or in your organisations, embed globalisation, internationalisation, and maybe I'll start off with you, Karen, on this one, please.
Sure. I think it's a way of thinking, and that way of thinking can be incorporated into having a globally minded curriculum that really focuses on global content and experiences. So we have this, I think, very standard definition of internationalization in education being a process of integrating an international, intercultural, and global dimension into the goals, the functions of teaching, learning, research services, and delivery of higher education. So how do we do that with a curriculum? Maybe it's expecting that our students become proficient in one or more languages. We need to incorporate international content into our courses. It could mean going on study abroad, participating in exchanges, internships, service learning. But it's not just students as well. We can't forget the faculty, professors, instructors. So it's teaching and research partnerships, offering joint degree programs with other universities. So again, emphasize a way of thinking, incorporating it, and how we operationalize it through curriculum and some of these things such as.
That's great. That's great. You've mentioned an awful lot of things there, Karen. I'm just interested to hear from the other two panelists as well to see if they've got any other things that they do. So, Yuri, anything that you'd like to add on what Karen has mentioned?
Well, maybe I'll share with you an example that might explain to some degree what do I mean about globalization and internationalization. At the University of British Columbia, they are running already a good number of years a master program for high performance coaches and technical directors. And the Canadians are known for their outstanding programs, and believe you me that they don't need to advertise it a lot, and they get many who register for the programs, and they cannot accept all the candidates. And after gaining a lot of experience, they are ready now to let other countries to join this project. And so John Bales, who is the president of the International Council of Coaching Excellence and was a former director of the Coaching Association of Canada, is in touch with UBC And we decided that since we in Israel don't have a master program for high performance coaches, unfortunately, perhaps we will start with some coaches who will be accepted, hopefully, to this program, and we will develop the master program according to the criteria set by the University of British Columbia. However, special needs of Israel are going to be taken into account, and so Israeli lecturers and Canadian lecturers will collaborate in order to prepare this specific program for the needs of Israel. And so we are now at the stage where the Israel Olympic Committee approved the program and they are willing to join the program. And we are waiting for the new Minister of Culture and Sports to approve it as well. So we asked the ministry to share the expenditure of such expensive program. So the ministry will cover third, the IOC will cover third, and the student, the high performance coach, will cover 1/3 of the program. And so I hope that what we plan will come into reality in 2024. So this is a way where global advantage is playing a major role, and we are gaining from the experience and the knowledge the Canadians have got already. And so I think they probably will be ready and are open enough to get some ideas from us, and we are very much willing to learn from them. So I think this is a demonstration, an example of what globalization and internationalization is in regard to sport coaching, for example.
Yeah.
Managing sport coaching.
That's a great example, Yuri, and an applied example about how using different partnerships and networks and their expertise and understanding and working in true collaboration can benefit all stakeholders and ultimately society. So that's a great example. Thanks, Yuri.
Right.
Gerco, you've got an awful lot of experience of working with international students and on seminars and workshops. Do you want to give us some examples or advice what you think globalization is and how you use that in higher education?
Yes, can you still hear me, Ruth?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because I lost the visuals. So I only see my own screen without any participants, but I'll try to answer your question. Within Hansa, I started 15 years ago all kinds of international games with participants from all over the world. Sometimes you had more than 40 different nationalities involved, and we try to mix the students in as much as we can in diverse teams, and they have to solve all kinds of problems.
Oh, I think we've just lost Gerco because I'm sure he wasn't finished answering his comprehensive answer. So we've got a few technical problems today, and I don't think Rosa is back on the line. Pascal, is that right? We're still having problems with Rosa joining us. So unless we get Gerco back on the line, Gerco's got some really good examples of how he has used and worked with many universities across the world and delivered research seminars and student seminars and brought all that together. And I was going to let him share what he's done and what some of the advantages of doing that, but hopefully he can join us back and come back to that. So we're down to 2 panel members. This is going well. So what I would like to then, we've both mentioned on some great examples about what internationalisation means and globalisation, and given us examples of how that's being demonstrated in your home countries and further abroad. Can I ask, I'll come to you first, Karen, can I ask, internationalisation is fabulous, it's got many advantages, but what are the barriers that you have come up against in delivering internationalisation for you or for the university or for different organisations? Over to you, Karen.
Okay, I think probably one of the more prominent ones is that educators really don't know where to start, and they need to be educated about how they can incorporate some of these ideas. So that just goes alongside education in teaching and giving them examples of, okay, how do you incorporate internationalization into your curriculum? Is it simply, do you invite in guest speakers? Does that mean that you check the box and you've satisfied that because you have an international speaker? And we would suggest, no, it's more than that. You've got to incorporate into your teaching and learning this way of thinking of including international examples, thinking and incorporating the idea of cultural differences and welcoming those sorts of things to really increase the diversity in the delivery of that. Now, having said that, we can offer to students an opportunity to have different experiences away from their own campuses. And as I said previously, there's many means of doing that through having partnerships with other universities and institutions, similar to what Yuri has just talked about with that master's program in coaching. It can be delivered online, or we know that we have opportunities for study abroad and exchanges and having internships that might be international, having service learning, those sorts of things. And nowadays, I would say students expect these things. And that's the big change. 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was great. We certainly had study abroad experiences going on and exchanges, but the change to me is in the attitude that students are more globally minded because of technology. As an example, social media, obviously, and therefore they're expecting more from their education and these opportunities. And on my campus, using it as an example, we're trying to give every undergraduate student an international opportunity away from the campus during their typical 4-year experience. And how are we doing that? We're really increasing the opportunities for experiential learning, and that may be regionally, but we're really working hard at giving an international experience where they obviously would go out of the country. And it's not without challenges, because certainly we have challenges such as the financial aspect, the sheer number of students, students getting on board with it, some of them even with financial assistance in this environment of challenging tuition fees. They often are working while they're going to school. So time away is sometimes a challenge for them, such that a shorter period of time might be more appealing to a student than a 3 or 4 month period away. So, but we feel we've got strategies to address all of these things and to try to put together a package that would be attractive and meet the needs of students. So it's really across the board, depending on the expectations and the realities of a student body. So I'll stop there. And
thanks, Karen. You touched on a whole host of things there about it's often the ambition of many higher education universities for the strategic direction of internationalising their university and their curriculum. but there's a recognition that there's many challenges for students and staff in the resourcing, whether that's time, whether that's number of students, whether that's the finances of students, etc. But your university is wanting to deliver some sort of external international experience on their programmes. So with that in mind, I'm just going to see if I can go back to Gerco to see if he can tell us what their university and if his IT system's working okay. Gerco, can I go back to the original question?
Sure. You can hear me well now?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So you asked for examples. We do several things. So as I explained, the international games in our program, and I first have to explain that I've got an international classroom. That means that my students come from, say, nearly all continents. So I've got 25 students with a very diverse background, which makes it fantastic to work with. Different educational systems as backgrounds when they say come to the Netherlands, and then we try to make them all say aware that diversity is an asset and not a problem. And sometimes it starts with a problem because we do not understand each other. But luckily, language skills, as I already also mentioned, is very important, so we can start communicating with each other. Another, say, compulsory program is intercultural communication. And I start with dance. I'm the world's worst dancer, as Ruth knows. But we start with dance. Dance is like also a kind of language. And we give students the opportunity, guided by a fantastic teacher. And, well, she opens up, say, a kind of level of trust. So students are able to show the dances from their, say, cultural background. They learn a new dance together. And overall, say, one of the objectives is to raise global citizens. So they start understanding other people's, say, attitudes, behaviors, not only from their own background, but also from the other's background. Not always directly accept, because it's, of course, a process that we go through. But through dancing, I like it very much. Students open up and, start communicating. And it's little things like your personal space. Do you allow somebody else to enter your personal space? If we want to go to dance together, how far do we dance from each other? How far is the distance? And do I trust you, for instance? Am I allowed to, for instance, put my hand on your shoulder if we go to classic, say, ballroom dancing? Little elements, but we use these, say, elements to open up the discussion. And at first, of course, you invite somebody, say, to start a dance together with you. And the other person has to agree. Otherwise, you're not dancing the tango together. You're dancing it completely alone. So hundreds of these examples, and students like it very much. And we bring the students also into other contexts, out of the class, into real world. We work a lot with international challenges. I had a group of students just traveling to Mallorca, the islands of Spain, and they did a beach cleanup together with all the primary schools. This was their challenge. So this is a group of 4 students, first developing all the plans, strategic plans, then starts a kind of marketing program to, say, involve the pupils, the students. Then they've got an educational program locally, etc., etc. I've got all these challenges, so our curriculum is built around these challenges. And then we try to guide the students with the right theories so they directly can apply and test it. So engaged, say, as much as we can. So we work with hundreds of different stakeholders, and students be aware that all these stakeholders have got other stakes and other, say, objectives they want to reach.
Great, thank you, Gerco, that comprehensive list of how you've worked with international students and what you've done, and the online activities as well, which is slightly different from what Karen was suggesting, where their university wants to try and get as many people overseas as possible. So there's the online activities too. Can I just say, I think Rosa is back in the room now, so if Rosa can hear me, can you come online? Great.
Yes,
great.
finally I can hear you all. Yes, I have been struggling.
We have our Venezuelan friend here with us now, so I throw you into the mix now here, Rosa, and just say, can you give me some examples of how you have tried to internationalise what you do within the university?
Okay, first of all, I have to apologize, but there are certain things that goes out of our control, okay? And technology is one of those. So sorry for that. And I have to say that I woke up very early, ready to, but impossible. So first of all, I haven't had a chance to listen what everybody has mentioned before, but in here there's one experience related with students from medicine and also physical education at the sports university. And one of the ideas has been basically to look at developing countries where there are students who are eager, or I would say at this moment, which I think is properly, take the chance to come to our country, because of course, by all means, we know that it is not, there is not good information about what happens in here, politically speaking, but nevertheless, we have students who are sponsors in several universities, particularly as in medicine, coming from Haiti and some African countries, and they get together, and the strategy basically, well, as we all know, language is one of the biggest barriers. So this is one of the first thing university have to deal with, and in here, well, the language is provided, which is a model which is not new, it's to everybody. But one of my experience as well in terms of internationalization refers to what do we give to the students afterwards? Because it's not just the package. So what happened afterwards? How do we continue? It's just the alumni process from university enough? So I think in here there's big potential for organizations to also to join. I'm going through the experience now to translate one of the books, and that's when I see, like, once they are back in their own countries and in their own reality, how much did we do in order to make them be contextualized? Because as Uri and I was able to say, they can adapt a program to the special needs of the country, but then it goes beyond, okay, how do we go further than that? So in there is where I see potentials that universities and networks get connected with associations in order how to continue this internationalization process that doesn't finish just with the student having finished their program and having their degree. So sorry for taking too long to answer, but I think I tried to join several of the ideas that were spoken before, perhaps. Thank you.
Yeah, that's perfect, Rosa. Thank you. You've highlighted some of the questions previously. What you try and do in your area of the world, and some of the barriers and challenges that are faced, and some suggestions with regards to contextualisation and language barriers, etc. So, Yuri, I'll bring you in now. Is there any the work that you've been involved in? Is there any perceived barriers that you see with regards to internationalisation and globalisation?
Well, let me first share with you a book which I read some time ago, which is named The New Bold World by William Nock. And William is a great entrepreneur, and he came to the conclusion that, as Gerco said earlier, that the place where you are is less important today. It is so unimportant that he invented a new word. And the word he invented is placelessness. We know that place is a place, placeness is without a place, but he wanted to emphasize how critical it is today, which doesn't, it's not important at all where you stay, and so he came up with the word placelessness. Now, at the same time, where we are at the moment in Israel, without reaching out to the global world, I mean, I would not be able to do whatever I'm doing today. So I think what the difference is between the attitude today and what we used to have in the past is that in the past, for students to travel to other university, to join outside their country a university, was extraordinary, was unusual. They were the pioneers, so to speak. Nowadays, if a student during his studies is not going for a semester or so to another university elsewhere in the world, you don't understand how come. So this came to a routine. It is very usual that students will gain information and knowledge wherever it exists, either by traveling to a university, spending time there, studying there, the whole program or part of the program, or through the new technologies via webinar like the one we conduct right now. Not to mention the International Council of Sports Sciences and of Sports Science and Physical Education, ICSPE, which, like WASM, the World Association for Sports Management, we exist because we represent people from all over. We share knowledge, we build networks, and we enable our members to exchange knowledge, experiences, ideas, and so we move forward with all kind of programs. And I think in that direction we should continue to go if we want to make sure that we understand that we don't understand everything. In other words, we, as earlier one of the panelists said, we always learn from our students, right? So we learn from our students, we learn from our lecturers, we learn from every person, from every human being. Everyone brings something that we don't know about. And that's how we share knowledge, and that's how we improve our understanding of whatever we do or whatever we want to do in the future.
You've all mentioned some great things there, and you've mentioned on the importance of not one size fits all, and we only learn and we only progress and we only produce global citizens if we understand cultural diversity and recognise people's points of view and people's different attitudes, etc. So you've all mentioned that in your answers. We've had a focus on students, but one of the barriers I've experienced over my years in higher education is sometimes getting staff to buy in to internationalisation and recognising that because we teach it this way or because we do it this way in the UK, this is the only way. And you've all broached on the fact that we have to learn from others and other people's points of views, etc. And that's what we're trying to instill in the teachers. So I'll invite anybody. Does anybody experience similar barriers where it's getting staff to buy in and reflect and recognise the importance of internationalisation and that there's different ways to do things? Karen, have you experienced that whilst at university or in different organisations that you've represented? You need to put your mic on, Karen.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes, experience that all the time, the buy-in piece. And I would say at my university and even within my own unit, often it gets to the point that there's not necessarily opposition to buy into it, but faculty members are so busy with the expectations that they face with respect to their workload allocation for teaching and research and service that they'll often use the sentiment, I just don't have time, or I don't understand how to do this. And I know that there's a workshop here to help me, but I can't fit it into my schedule to do that. So I think that's a little bit of an organizational structural barrier. And, you know, we certainly try to get around those sorts of things. But I think going back to one of my original points, just educating people as to incorporating these ideas can come in very different ways, and it's not necessarily such a big task and an overwhelming expectation that many do think about. So some of the examples that all three of you, Yuri and Rosa and Gerco, have shared, I think those are important for people to hear, because it gives them ideas and gives them thoughts that, hey, you know, we could do this, I could do this, as well as an instructor.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Gerco, do you want to add anything there? Barriers from staff that you've experienced?
Yes, I think it's also on an organizational level. It depends a little bit on what part in our university you are working, but some of our managers unfortunately see internationalization as a cost. They just think, well, internationalization, it takes additional translation of modules, additional, say, language skills of colleagues. They need to go into training, etc. So that's a little bit the downside. And I try to convince them that, well, this is the way forward, but still this is like a challenge because, well, not all managers, luckily, but some of them still think in the old way, saying, well, we're allocating money to certain programs and internationalization is also a cost, is a program. Of course, I do not agree. And I like to emphasize that we have to go the other way around, that it should be in each program, so it should not be treated separately. I think each program has got an international component. And if you develop new modules, internationalization is not separate, but is part of that module. But I'm still on my, my challenge to convince them. Not all are convinced directly, so it needs a little bit of energy, but I'm still going for it. So give me another 10 years, I'll be there.
Gerco for international champion. Rosa, would you like to jump in here with your ideas? Or
Yes.
any barriers that
Well, I can say that I have seen from both sides. I have to say, and this is something, this is a message that I would like it to be taken positive. Like, for example, it depends on a cultural background. I would say that many Latin American countries are very embracing, and they are really fond of having this sort of, exchange programs. And I would say in general. However, from the other side, like, for example, the barriers in terms of language for Latin America is big, because this is the only area of the world in which most countries, connected neighbor countries, speaks one language, which is Spanish. So that has been one of the elements, key elements, I would say. But in terms of having international students, most of them are very embracing, I would say. On the other hand, and this is, a message. Sometimes when I was international student, because many of us have had the experience, sometimes I felt like I was receiving, here's money coming. So we have to be careful of how we handle that situation. In order, like the international student doesn't realize, of course it's business, but at the same time, you have to treat them, the persons, as embracing them in their culture. So there is a strong cultural component in which how able you are possible to embrace the newcomers. And I don't know, Ruth, whether I have chance, because of a good experience that we are going on through at the moment, and perhaps it can help others, but it deals with the teaching of English, okay, with EFL, English as a foreign language, and teaching English is one of the good example of globalization. And there are some countries that have problems with connectivity, very serious problem with connectivity. However, telephone, there's information, people do have more and possibility to have access. So we have had an experience that is very good, and it's through Telegram, through EFL consultant, together with the British Council and the university here. So Telegram has, as an application, has been very useful and has been able to connect and have classes. Particularly, this international experience has made it possible to have connect people even from areas, remote areas, when connection is not so good. And I know this experience has been replicated by the EFL consultants in some countries in the world, particularly from developing countries where there's no much connection.
Great. Thanks, Rosa. That's a really good example and a proactive example of how you're trying to overcome some of the barriers that are pertinent in your geographical area. Thanks, Rosa. Yuri, do you want to add anything?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you.
So, do you want to add anything to that, to what Rosa just, or any?
In the direction of what Rosa just mentioned, one of my concerns is the fact that maybe we are running too fast for those who have not. In other words, those who have are running fast forward, developing all the tools, the means, the high-tech methods of teaching, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, in developing countries and in countries where people have no means to pay for those activities, for those studies, for those seminars, symposium, and so on and so forth, what's going to happen with them? And we are not talking about few countries. We are talking about quite a number of countries and large populations that those media, social media, and internet access are not reachable for them, and that is something I believe we will have to think. How do we bridge the gap between what we have today, the opportunities that we have today, the opportunities our students and lecturers have, experts, researchers have, and those who have not. That is something I think we should take into account and should not ignore. And also, one more aspect, I think that the pandemic speed up the online learning. And at the same time, we know that in schools that were shut down during the pandemic and tried to do their best via internet access and online courses, the results were not very promising. However, when I review as a preparation for our webinar today, the overall results of online learning using all kinds of technologies, videos, and so on and so forth, versus the traditional way of studying, I can share with you that all in all, online learning delivers. In other words, it's an unbelievable tool that makes the studies inexpensive versus the traditional studies. And so this is something that we all should respect and understand. And another aspect that I learned, that intelligent and innovative use of social networks by innovative teachers increases the effectiveness of online learning, and that actually motivates all concerned, lecturers, coaches, teachers, managers, to enter those way of teaching and studying in order to deliver to the students up-to-date knowledge and what have you.
Yeah, you highlight an important message, Yuri and Rosa, that global teaching excellence is great, but there's barriers to it and there's challenges to it. And I think we have a responsibility to help solve those challenges and overcome those problems. And this is one of the goals of Global Teaching Excellence. How can we reach out to people that don't necessarily have access to such activities or learning and teaching, etc., and how can we enhance what they do and bring education and global teaching to them? And that's one of the goals of GTE. I know it's in its early days, but that's the focus of what we want to try and achieve. So we've got 10 minutes left.
And Ruth, if I may, just one sentence. When I checked out the tuition for foreign students, it's 2 times more than the native ones. For example, in Europe, for European Union countries, a program will cost 7,000 euro, and for foreigners, 15,000. Yeah. Now, in my humble opinion, for the universities, it's a way to make money. And for the foreigners, it makes it so difficult to join those programs. Yeah. And we have to raise this voice too, I believe. So, excuse me.
You raise a very important ethical question. What are we in business for, and how do we? What are our values, and how do we enable people that might not have the resources to attend a university?
Right.
What's the role of our organisations, and how we can get out to reach those people and help those people? So thanks for that, Yuri. We've got 9 minutes left. I just want to go around the panel very quickly, and then there's a few questions that have come in the chat which I would like to get to. To you, in a couple of words, what do you think is excellence? How do we measure excellence? How would we describe what we are doing in higher education, in sport and physical activity? How do you measure an excellent outcome? What does that look like? So I'll come to Gerco first, because you're on the left of my screen. Gerco, what's excellence to you?
Yeah, well, first of all, 2 components. International orientation on a global scale. So not only case studies from Europe, but case studies from all over the world. Second important part, intercultural competence. And then I emphasis on, well, developing and learning social skills. Yes, technical development's fantastic, but we can only send them abroad if they're able to connect. And these social skills within my students, although they all think, that's common sense and that comes natural, it doesn't. We have to learn students how to connect and to be social active. How do we measure? Well, my boss does it quantitative, I do it qualitative. Only if you really build strong connections, people that you could phone, say, in 30 years and say, hi, I'm there, do you still know me? That's a strong qualitative connection. And my boss looks for the quantitative numbers.
Okay. Thank you, Gerco. Karen, what does excellence mean for you?
In this context, it means definitely incorporating a global teaching perspective. And secondly, incorporating equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Great. Good answer. Thank you. Rosa, excellence from your side.
Okay, well, Karen mentioned 2 important things, equity and diversity, commitment, ownership, and social justice. And when I say social justice, perhaps this is the one that looks more ethereal, or perhaps for some people, it's just a slogan. But I think we have to review in terms of what do we mean when we do internationalization, and how much are we practicing that? Because so far, economy is in there, but there's also this component in which how we make it available to everybody, and not to forget the experience for the pandemic, COVID, and the butterfly effect. So it's not enough to be great and excellent in one part. We have to work harder to make it work for everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, Rosa. Yuri, excellence in your perspective.
I think everything was said, and I would not waste time just to repeat what was said. I do agree with Karen and Gerco and Rosa, and I think that's the direction of what excellence is all about in this respect.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for that, panel. I've just got a few very positive comments in the chat that people are delighted that we've started this GTE forum, and I'll mention how we're going to continue it in a few minutes. But there's a question from, I think it was Darlene, if I can just find it. We're using the terms globalisation and internationalisation, we're interchanging them. Does anybody have any thoughts about what the difference is between globalisation and internationalisation? To answer Darlene's question.
I'll jump in. I think there is a difference, and I see globalization as the catalyst for internationalization.
Great. Anybody else want to comment? I'd just like to summarise, I know Yuri's going to finish off the session, but I'd just like to summarise, I think it's been a really great start to Global Teaching Excellence, and thank you to all the panellists and indeed the people for joining in. It's great to see so many people on board. I think it's really important, and looking at the chat and the positive comments that are coming through, this is something that's needed. This is something where we can share best practice, and we will build on this, and we have a series of events over the next academic year, and we'll look at some of the ideas and thoughts that are coming out of these discussions and see how we can help overcome some of the challenges and overcome some of the barriers, because I think that's a really important role of what ICSPE does and also of what WASM does as well. So just to summarise, it's quite clear that Global Teaching Excellence and what we mean by it has many advantages. You've mentioned cultural awarenesses, diversity, learning best practice and seeing that there's different ways to do things. You've given lots of examples about partnership working, true collaborations, online, visits overseas, international lecturers, etc. But you've also recognised that there's barriers to internationalisation. That can be resources, staffing, timing, language, costs, etc. But the outcomes that you see, how we measure true global teaching excellence, can be great outcomes in that of social skills, of developing global citizens of the future for a sustainable society, the teaching's perspective, the importance of EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion, commitment and ownership, and what role do we play as people working in higher education or as working in sports organisations, etc., and social justice, and not just having social justice as a slogan or a tagline, but how do we truly enact that, and how do we ensure that social justice is there for everybody? So that's a brief summary of what the discussion has brought about today. There will be another one of these sessions in a couple of months' time, entitled, where is it? Theory to Practice or Practice to Theory. Which way is best to study sport? So keep an eye out on the ICSPE website and the WASM website, and we'll send out details about that in due time. I'm going to hand over to Yuri now, but can I say thank you to the panel members for taking the time, for getting up especially early, and also for the people that have joined us online, and for the ICSPE office for sorting out all the technical side of this as well. So thank you very much, but I'll pass over now to Yuri to close